When Aristotle talked about persuasion, he said to look at logos, pathos, and ethos. Logos is logical reasoning, pathos is emotional reasoning, and that leads us to our third one, ethos, which is your credibility. When we look at ethos, we're looking at, does the audience view the speaker as being credible? Does the audience view the speaker as being credible and believable? So let's define credibility. Credibility is the degree to which your audience regards you as a believable spokesperson. We know that if an audience doesn't believe us and view us as credible, they're going to stop listening. And so we have to build our credibility with our audience, but we also have to realize that our credibility rests in the minds of the audience. And so when we think about that, it's not something that we can just go and convince people we have. We can't buy it at a store. We can't put it on like a superhero costume. Instead, we have to prove to the audience that we're competent, knowledgeable, have good character, and are charismatic. So what we really want to think about with credibility are these three main areas: competence, character, and charisma. So competence. Competence is showing your knowledge of a topic. You want to show that you're familiar with it, that you understand it, that you know how to define it, that you know how to apply it. One of the vital characteristics with competence is actually showing your involvement and your engagement with the topic that you're speaking about. If you're persuading us to give blood, talk about the number of times you've given blood. If you're persuading us to volunteer, talk about the volunteer opportunities that you're involved with. Showing your involvement and engagement builds your competence, and in a sense, builds your credibility. The second element of credibility is character. This is your individual honesty and basic nature. What's your character as a human being? In a class, through the posts that you use, through the discussions you engage in, through the assignments that you share, you start building your credibility with your instructor and your classmates every single time. And so your character shows from your first interaction and continues to be shown through all the interactions you have with others. When you're engaging with an audience, stress fairness. Show interest in your audience and in the audience's welfare. Show how your topic impacts the audience, why it's important to the audience, and start from there. When we start with an audience focus and an actual concern for our audience, it makes it much easier for us to build our character because the audience sees us as being on their side. The last element of credibility is charisma. Charisma is an individual's dynamism or forcefulness. The audience is more likely to see you as credible if they actually like you. And so one of the things that we have to do to build our charisma is build a positive outlook. Stress your pleasure at getting to talk to the audience. Be empathetic. Think about how your audience feels, what they're going through, and connect with that as you're talking to them. Just like with logos and pathos, ethos, credibility has some fallacies that we have to watch out for. The first fallacy that we have to watch out for is something known as a personal interest attack. A personal interest attack is where you attempt to disqualify someone from having a legitimate point of view because he or she is either not directly affected by the issue or they don't have firsthand knowledge. We have to be really careful about personal interest attacks because when we use them, we're saying that a person doesn't have a voice or shouldn't have an opinion because of how connected they are to an issue. The next fallacy is a character attack. It's also known as ad hominem in Latin, which means against the man. Character attacks are accusing another person of some wrongdoing or some character flaw. We see it in political advertisements. We see it in debates all the time where people unfortunately default to attacking the other person and their character instead of actually talking about the issue. When we see this happen, a warning light needs to go off in our brain where we stop, take a step back, and really think about what is the issue? Is it being addressed? Are we talking about the issue and things that relate, or are we completely off track? The last credibility fallacy that we're going to talk about in this video is name calling. Name calling is where a speaker gives an idea, a group of people, or a political philosophy a bad name to try to get listeners to condemn an idea. without looking at the evidence or the argument. And so if I label something as terrorist, people immediately say, oh, terrorism is bad. I don't want to be around a terrorist. And they stop listening to the argument that's presented. When name calling comes into play, we need to think about what is actually being said, analyze that evidence, analyze the argument, and make our decision based on that, not based on a label that's being used. I hope you now have a much better understanding of ethos for credibility, and also have a better understanding of Aristotle's logos, ethos, and pathos.